Friends, if you want to watch super hit movie Lilo and Stitch in English, then you must like this video if you're visiting our channel for the first time. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, friends, in today's video. The movie we're going to talk about is called Lilo and Stitch. We will talk about what this movie is and where you can watch it, all the interesting facts about this movie in today's video. I'm going to tell you, I'm also going to give you all the information on which OTT platform or on which satellite channel you will get to watch this movie also. We will talk in detail about the technical department, music department, pre-production filming, post-pre-production budget, box office collection of this film. We will also talk about the story of this film, and I will also give you a small review of the story of this film. Apart from this, we will discuss about the facts of this film's storylines, star cast actors' performance in the film, and which character has played which role. That's why I request you, friends, to watch this video till the end. Start the video. Lilo and Stitch is a 2025 American science fiction comedy film directed by Dean Fleischer Camp and written by Kekaniokalani Bright and Mike Van Waes. Produced by Walt Disney Pictures and Rideback, the film is a live-action animated remake of Disney's 2002 traditionally animated film Lilo and Stitch, with some elements also based on that film's animated sequel films and TV shows. It stars Maia Kealoha in her film debut as Lilo Pelikai, with original Lilo and Stitch writer-director Chris Sanders reprising his voice role as Stitch. It also stars Sydney Elizebeth Agudong, Billy Magnussen, Hannah Waddingham, Courtney B. Vance, and Zach Galifianakis, with original cast members Tia Carrere, Amy Hill, and Jason Scott Lee appearing in different supporting roles. Lilo and Stitch premiered at the El Capitan Theater in Los Angeles on May 17, 2025, and was released in the United States by Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures on May 23, 2025. The film has received mixed reviews from critics and has grossed $613.5 million, becoming the third highest grossing film of 2025. Plot: on the planet Turo, Dr. Jumba Jookiba is convicted by the United Galactic Federation of illegal genetic experimentation for creating Experiment 626, an aggressive and near-indestructible creature with advanced learning capabilities. Jumba is found guilty and imprisoned, while 626 is sentenced to exile for his destructive behavior. However, 626 escapes by stealing a police cruiser and using its hyperdrive to reach planet Earth, crashing in the Hawaiian island of Kauai. The Grand Councilwoman offers Jumba his freedom if he captures 626, pairing him with deputized Earth expert Agent Pleakley. 626 crashes near a wedding reception and is run over by a tourist trolley before being taken to an animal shelter. A Hawaiian girl named Lilo Pelikai is expelled from hula school for pushing her bully Myrtle off stage due to frustration over her sister Nani's absence. Their social worker, Mrs. Kakoa, visits and finds Nani unfit to care for them, demanding she complete her tasks in a week. The next day, hearing that Lilo wants a friend, their neighbor takes Lilo to the animal shelter where 626 is kept. Realizing Jumba and Pleakley are after him, 626 impersonates as a dog and allows Lilo to adopt him for his protection. Nani takes them to her resort job with her friend David Kawina. Lilo names 626 Stitch, after Nani comments on having to stitch a car seat he tore. They enjoy the resort, but Stitch accidentally causes a table fire, leading to Nani's dismissal. Nani is visited by Keikoa and Cobra Bubbles, a CIA agent who is investigating Stitch's arrival while posing as a social worker. Keikoa demands that Nani find new employment immediately. Despite interviews, she is rejected due to Lilo and Stitch's antics. Lilo helps Nani get hired as a surfing instructor, and they enjoy surfing after her first shift. Meanwhile, Jumba and Pleakley unsuccessfully try to capture Stitch while jet skiing, causing the Pelikais and Stitch to wipe out, nearly drowning Lilo when Stitch sinks. After Lilo's recovery, Kakoa tells Nani the Hawaiian government can cover the health insurance costs if she relinquishes her guardianship, which she reluctantly agrees to. As the sisters share one last night together, Stitch reflects on his actions and solemnly returns to the animal shelter alone. Meanwhile, the Grand Councilwoman, frustrated with Jumba's failure to capture Stitch, cancels their deal and orders Pleakley to return Jumba to prison. However, Jumba ditches Pleakley and decides to capture Stitch. Kakoa and Bubbles arrive the next morning to find that Lilo has escaped from her bedroom. They and Nanny start searching for her. Lilo finds Stitch at the shelter, but Jumba arrives to recapture Stitch. They escape to the Pelikai's home and fight Jumba, destroying their house. During the fight, Jumba reveals that Stitch used Lilo for his protection, leading to guilt-ridden Stitch's surrender. Jumba takes Stitch aboard his spaceship using a portal-generating gun, intending to erase Stitch's newfound empathy. However, Lilo sneaks aboard and frees Stitch, and they eject Jumba from the ship. The ship crashes into the ocean, trapping Lilo and Stitch underwater. Stitch rescues her, but as he cannot swim to the surface, he releases her to let her emerge and drowns. Nani and David rescue Lilo, but she refuses to leave Stitch. David returns Lilo to shore while Nani swims back to get Stitch from the ocean floor. They reach shore, but Stitch remains motionless. After Bubbles finds Pleakley and they rejoin the group, David revives Stitch by jump-starting his lungs. Shortly after, the Grand Councilwoman arrives and rearrests Jumba. After seeing Stitch's change of heart, she decides to let Stitch exile on Earth with his newfound ohana. As the Pelikai, Stitch, and company return home, Kekoa tells Nani she can give Lilo's guardianship to David and Tutu, allowing her to stay home. The ohana then repairs the house and lives happily together. Nani, now attending the University of California, San Diego to study marine biology, uses Jumba's portal gun to visit Lilo and Stitch back on Kauai. Cast. Main article, list of Lilo and Stitch characters. Maia Kealoha as Lilo Pelikai, an orphaned 6-year-old native Hawaiian girl who loves hula, surfing, and wildlife with a special affinity for all things gross. She is very imaginative yet rebellious and impulsive, which gets her into trouble often and ostracizes her from her classmates, who consider her a weirdie. Chris Sanders as the voice of Stitch, a blue koala-like illegal alien genetic experiment known as Experiment 626, who is adopted by Lilo as a dog. He is described as unruly, impulsive, and freakishly strong. He's a furry, ugly, cute wrecking ball seemingly bent on destroying everything in his path. Sanders, who wrote and directed the original animated film alongside Dean DeBlois, created the character and originated the role. Sydney Elizebeth Agudong as Nani Pelikai, the older sister of Lilo and her legal guardian. She is described as intelligent, overachieving, athletic, type A, and a straight-A student who has been feeling the increasing pressures of having to take care of Lilo, causing issues with her and Lilo's social worker, with Child Protective Services threatening to separate the Pelikai sisters and put Lilo into foster care. Zach Galifianakis as the voice of Dr. Jumba Jukeba, the mad scientist who created Stitch. Galifianakis also physically portrays Jumba's human disguise. Billy Magnussen as the voice of Agent Wendell Pleakley, an agent of the United Galactic Federation and their expert on Earth, sent to prevent Jumba from harming any humans while hunting Stitch. Magnussen also portrays Pleakley's human disguise. Courtney B. Vance as Cobra Bubbles, a CIA agent sent to capture Stitch. Hannah Waddingham as the voice of the Grand Councilwoman, the gray alien leader of the United Galactic Federation and its council, who orders Jumba and Pleakley to capture Stitch after his escape. Kaipo Dudoit as David Kawina, a fire performer and lifeguard who is a loyal friend and neighbor to Lilo and Nani. He performs the fire knife dance at the where he and Nani work at. Cahiel Machado was originally cast in the role, but he was recast shortly thereafter due to his prior usage of a racial slur. Tia Carrere as Mrs. Kekoa, a social worker who is a practical, by-the-book kind and patient woman who checks in regularly with Nani, but is nevertheless aware of Nani's struggles to keep up with her duties. Carrere previously voiced Nani in Lilo and Stitch animated media. Amy Hill as a native Hawaiian in her 70s who is the longtime neighbor of the Pelikais and the grandmother of David Kawina. She is described as a warm, quick-witted woman who speaks with a local pidgin accent. She is original to this film. Hill previously voiced Mrs. Hasagawa in the original film and Lilo and Stitch the series. Emery Hukano-Briel as Myrtle Edmonds, Lilo's hula classmate and bully. Jason Scott Lee as the manager for the Nani and David work at called Jimmy's Luau. Lee previously voiced David in the original film and Lilo and Stitch 2, Stitch Has a Glitch, 2005. Production. Development. On October 3, 2018, it was announced that Walt Disney Pictures was developing a live-action computer-generated animation hybrid film remake of Disney's 2002 animated feature film Lilo and Stitch. The film was set to be adapted by Mike Van Waes, produced by Dan Lin and Jonathan Eirich, and co-produced by Ryan Halprin. On October 24, 2018, Van Waes revealed that he began to work on the remake script. On November 13, 2020, John M. Chu entered talks to direct the film, while Van Waes was reported to have left the project, with the studio looking for a new screenwriter to rewrite Van Waes' script, though Chu would ultimately not direct the film due to other obligations. On July 14, 2022, Deadline Hollywood reported that Dean Fleischer Camp was chosen to direct instead, while Chris Kekaniokalani Bright was in talks to rewrite the script. Bright was fully confirmed to be the writer in February 2023. The day after Deadline Hollywood's announcement of Fleischer Camp and Bright's involvement, Van Waes quote tweeted from Deadline Hollywood's tweet on their article, welcoming Fleischer Camp and Bright to the film's production, possibly indicating that he is still involved with the film. This was later confirmed by the Writers Guild of America West, listing both Bright and Van Waes as the film's screenwriters. The film was given the working title Bad Dog, a reference to the ever-misbehaving Stitch being mistaken for and adopted as a dog, while the new production company established for the film was named Blue Koala Pictures, Inc., in reference to a typical description of the character's physical appearance. Casting. Since the announcement of the film's development, it was speculated that the original film's co-writer-co-director, Chris Sanders, would reprise his role as the voice of Stitch in the remake. Sanders stated in a September 2022 interview that Disney had not yet approached him on reprising the role at the time, although he would be open to returning to voice his creation. It was reported in November 2022 that a casting call had been issued for the film. The initial casting call was later tweeted on November 22nd by the Coalition of Asian Pacifics in Entertainment. In February 2023, Zach Galifianakis joined the cast in a then unspecified role. While The Wrap reported at the time that he would voice Pleakley, The Hollywood Reporter wrote in April 2023 that Galifianakis had officially signed on to be voicing Dr. Jumba Jookiba. In late March, Maia Kealoha was cast in the lead role as Lilo Pelikai. In April 2023, Billy Magnussen was cast as the voice of Agent Wendy Pleakley, 19, and Sydney Agudong was cast as Nani Pelikai. Later that month, Kyle Machado was cast as David Kawina, while Courtney B. Vance was cast as Cobra Bubbles, who fans initially believed was cut from the film's cast of characters Tia Carrere and Amy Hill, who both voiced roles in the original film and its original sequel material, such as Lilo and Stitch, the series, were cast in new roles, with Sanders in final negotiations to reprise his voice role as Stitch. Sanders ultimately did 5 voice recording sessions late into production, with each session lasting about 4 hours, admitting in a February 2025 interview that his Stitch voice is difficult to maintain for such a long period each time. Sanders never went on set during filming, as he was working on his film The Wild Robot 2024 at DreamWorks Animation at the time of production. The castings of Agudong and Machado were met with controversy on social media shortly after their announcements, with accusations of colorism and whitewashing towards Disney and the film's casting crew, as the two actors are of lighter skin tones than their characters' original animated counterparts. Sydney Agudong, the older sister of actress Sienna Agudong, is a mixed-race woman born and raised on Kauai, where the franchise is mainly set, to a Caucasian mother and a father who is Filipino and Hawaiian. Agudong received comments on her Instagram account attacking her for accepting the role slur. After internet users discovered that Machado previously used a racial slur on his Spotify and Instagram accounts, Disney quietly recast him with Kaipo Duduet. Machado later posted an apology for his prior use of the slur via Instagram on April 27, 2023. In June 2023, Jason Scott Lee, who voiced David Kawina in the original film and Lilo and Stitch 2, Stitch Has a Glitch 2005, revealed on the podcast Kyle Meredith With that he will have a cameo in the film as the manager of the luau where Nani and David work. In May 2025, it was revealed that the original film's main antagonist, Gantu, the corrupt captain of the United Galactic Federation's armada, was cut from the film. Shortly after the film's release, Fleischer Camp and Eirich revealed to Entertainment Weekly that Gantu was in the original scripts of the film, but the former advocated for the character's removal and shifting the antagonist role to Jumba. Fleischer Camp believed that Gantu's arrival on Earth in the original film turned it into a more conventional movie, while making Jumba the villain added a personal connection to the live-action film story, as Fleischer Camp saw him as a terrible delinquent father figure for Stitch, saying, "You want your main antagonist to also be the representative of the theme of the film." It seemed like an opportunity to do that, as opposed to just, there's a big bad boss that comes down and is shooting lasers at everyone. Filming. Principal photography was slated to start in Oahu, Hawaii on March 13, 2023 and finish on June 16th. However, the first day of filming was delayed until April 17th. On April 16, 2023, a fire broke out in a trailer within the base camp of the film set in Halewa, causing approximately $200,000 in damage. The trailer contained costumes that would have been used for the first 3 weeks of filming. The fire started before 11 p.m. HST and was extinguished by 1 a.m. the following day. There were no reported injuries, although the beginning of filming was delayed indefinitely. The Honolulu Police Department classified it as a first-degree arson and opened an investigation in response. Filming eventually began by May 1, 2023, when a portion of the Kekaniokalani Highway was closed for the film's production. Filming was suspended in July due to the 2023 SAG-AFTRA strike. It eventually resumed in February 2024 and finally wrapped in early March that year. Visual effects and design. The visual effects are provided by Industrial Light and Magic. Soundtrack. Main article, Lilo and Stitch 2025 soundtrack, which was released as a single on May 9, 2025, ahead of a live performance of their version on Season 23 of American Idol on May 12th. A song featured prominently throughout the animated continuity returns for this film in a duet performed by Sydney Agudong and Maia Kealoha as Nani and Lilo respectively. The soundtrack album was released on May 21, 2025 by Walt Disney Records. A limited edition picture disc vinyl single featuring 3 of the songs were released on May 23, 2025. Marketing. A first look at the film's live-action Stitch design was revealed at the 2024 D23 convention on August 9, 2024. Screen Rant and Collider both reacted positively to the reveal. On November 8, 2024, during D23 Brazil, Disney released a still from the film showing Stitch wearing a lie and looking at an out-of-focus Lilo while standing on her bed. On November 22nd, Disney published the first teaser poster for the film, featuring an extreme close-up of Stitch, 61. On November 25th, Disney released the first teaser trailer, showing Stitch on a beach destroying a sandcastle modeled after the Cinderella Castle, as depicted in Disney's production logo. On November 27th, the same day of the wide release of Moana 2, which the first teaser was attached to in theaters, a new poster was shown featuring Stitch with a Kakamora from the Moana franchise in his mouth, alluding to the original film's crossover-based marketing campaign in which Stitch invaded other Disney films. On December 18th, 2 days before the release of Mufasa the Lion King, another crossover poster and another teaser trailer were released, the latter attached to Mufasa, both showing Stitch being held up in the air in the same vein as the presentation of baby Simba in The Lion King 1994. The trailer shows him, wearing water wings, being held up by a pair of human arms until he struggles out of them to splash in shallow seawater. The accompanying poster has him being held up by Rafiki instead, as with The Lion King, interstitial trailer for the original Lilo and Stitch film. A TV spot created exclusively to air during Super Bowl likes was released on February 9, 2025, featuring Stitch seemingly interrupting the kickoff by running around Caesars Superdome like a football player. The spot received 173 million online views in 24 hours, making it Disney's most digitally viewed spot in the company's history. The official trailer was released on March 12, 2025, Lilo and Stitch creator Chris Sanders' 63rd birthday, showing several of the characters other than Stitch for the first time. The trailer's release caused Lilo and Stitch to be the #1 trending topic on X, Twitter, YouTube, and Douyin, the Chinese version of TikTok, reaching #1 on the former platform within an hour of release. On March 14th, Disney announced that the trailer became the company's second most viewed live-action film trailer within 24 hours, with 158 million views within that time, only behind the teaser trailer for The Lion King 2019, which received 224.6 million views within such time frame. On March 19th, several posters inspired by past remakes of classic Disney films, including Snow White 2025, Cinderella 2015, Beauty and the Beast 2017, and Aladdin 2019, featured Stitch messing with important objects from each one of the films. On April 3rd, during CinemaCon's Disney panel, a new poster was revealed featuring Stitch having wreaked havoc on elements from Disney and the company's major film studios, such as Marvel Studios, 20th Century Studios, Pixar Animation Studios, and Lucasfilm. Release. In November 2020, Variety and The Hollywood Reporter reported that Disney had not determined whether the film would be released theatrically or through Disney+. In November 2022, it was confirmed via a casting call that the film was to be produced for a direct-to-streaming Disney+ release. In August 2024, the film was shifted to a summer 2025 theatrical release. In October, the film was given a release date of May 23, 2025. The release also included engagements in RealD 3D, Dolby Cinema, and 4DX. AMC Theaters had a special Lilo and Stitch opening night fan event in Dolby Cinema. Regal Cinemas had a special Lilo and Stitch fan event in 4DX, and Cinemark Theaters had a Lilo and Stitch fan event super ticket package in RealD 3D that took place on May 22nd at 6:26 p.m., referencing Stitch's experiment number, other name of Experiment 626. The film held its world premiere at the El Capitan Theater in Los Angeles, the same venue that hosted the premiere of the original film on May 17, 2025. The film was rated PG by the MPA, making it the first Disney live-action remake to share the same rating as the original film. Reception. Box office. As of June 1st, 2025, Lilo and Stitch has grossed $278.9 million in the United States and Canada and $334.5 million in other territories, for a worldwide total of $630.5 million. After tickets went on sale, Fandango Media reported that Lilo and Stitch became the best first-day ticket pre-sale of the year for a PG-rated title, surpassing a Minecraft movie, Snow White, Dogman, and the U.S. release of Paddington in Peru. It also became the second most first-day ticket pre-seller for a Disney remake, behind The Lion King. The film was initially tracking to gross $165 million domestically over the 4-day Memorial Day weekend, after making $55 million on its first day, including $14.5 million from Thursday night previews. Projections were increased to $175 to $180 million. On May 25th, it was reported that the film was now expected to make $183 million over the 4-day weekend, breaking Top Gun Maverick's record $160 million for the Memorial Day weekend debut. The film would go make $182.6 million over the 4-day Memorial Day weekend, setting a record. In its second weekend, the film made $61.8 million, a 58% drop, remaining in first. On June 1st, it surpassed The Smurfs 2011 as the highest-grossing live-action animated film of all time. Critical response. The film received mixed reviews. On the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, 70% of 184 critics' reviews are positive. The website's consensus reads, "Recapturing the adorable charm of the original, if not quite matching its rambunctious sense of imagination, Lilo and Stitch emerges out of the crate as one of the better live-action remakes of a Disney classic." Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 53 out of 100 based on 38 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of A on an to F scale, while those surveyed by PostTrack gave it a 90% overall positive score, with 81% saying they would definitely recommend the film. Several changes made to the remake were criticized, including the removal of Pleakley's drag disguise, Gantu's absence, Jumba being villainized as the main antagonist, and the decision to have Nani surrender her guardianship of Lilo. Future. In an interview ahead of the movie's release, director Dean Fleischer Camp and producer Jonathan Eirich said they were focused on the release of the current film and had not discussed concrete plans for a sequel. Camp echoed Eirich's sentiment that any future direction would depend on audience reception, noting the franchise's expansive world as a source of potential inspiration, with Eirich pointing out Easter eggs in the film referencing Angel, Reuben, and 627, whom he erroneously refers to as Leroy. Disney's 2002 animated film about the little Hawaiian girl who befriends an alien who looks like a blue koala was written and directed by Chris Sanders and Dean DeBlois, who would go on to create another heartwarming animated film about a human and a fantastic creature, How to Train Your Dragon. Both have live-action adaptations this year, and the 2025 Lilo and Stitch, while not quite justifying yet another IP expansion, maintains the sincere and engaging performances, beautiful settings, chaotic comedy, exhilarating surfing scenes, and touching examples of ohana, which means family, including found family. The original's most ardent fans will also appreciate appearances from members of its cast, including Tia Carrere, the original Nani, Lilo's big sister, Jason Scott Lee, the original David, Nani's friend, and Amy Hill, excellent as a kind neighbor named Tutu, following her role in the original as an absent-minded shop owner. Sanders returns as well, once again voicing the rambunctious alien Lilo named Stitch. And like the 2002 version, this one has a soundtrack featuring classic songs by Elvis Presley. On a planet far, far away, a multi-eyed scientist named Jumba, Zach Galifianakis, has created a creature he calls 626, designed to destroy. The planet's leader, Hannah Waddingham, continuing the plummy accent of the original Zoe Caldwell, orders that the dangerous mutant be destroyed. When it escapes, headed for Earth, she sends Jumba and her planet's Earth expert, scrawny, one-eyed Pleakley, sweetly earnest Billy Magnussen, to get him back. Once on Earth, they conveniently disguise themselves as humans who look like Galifianakis and Magnussen. By that time, 626 has been captured by dog catchers and has broken out of his cage in the pound. He sees a poster promoting rescue adoption and makes himself look a little more dog-like by absorbing his second set of arms, the spikes on his spine, and his antennae. 6-year-old Lilo, Maia Kealoha, is mourning the loss of her parents, bullied by girls in her hula dance class, and somehow never quite fits in. At the dog pound, she falls instantly in love with 626 when he copies the dog in the poster and gives her a hug. She brings him home and names him Stitch. This film wisely gives more attention to Nani than the 2002 version. She is played with verve and warmth by Sydney Elizebeth Agudong. Nani is more than a worried but devoted caretaker. She has her own dreams and conflicts. A welcome addition is Hill's Tutu as the open-hearted grandmother of Nani's fire-stick-twirling friend and possible romantic interest, David Kaipo Dudoit. Courtney B. Vance plays Cobra Bubbles, an alien investigating federal agent with a gold earring. Audiences have speculated since 2002 about whether Lilo is on the autism spectrum because she seems to have trouble recognizing social cues and has some possibly obsessive odd beliefs, like a fish that controls the weather. Whether she is or not, one key element of both films is how caring for someone else helps Lilo feel less sharply the loss of her parents and gain perspective on the responsibility her teenage sister struggles with in trying to prove to a social worker that she can take care of Lilo. Stitch 2 moves from a chaos engine who identifies with a movie monster to someone who wants to love and be loved, to be part of Ohana. Children new to the story will enjoy some gross-out humor, slapstick naughtiness, and the reassuring theme that families of all kinds, including those we choose, can be devoted to the idea of Ohana. Director Dean Fleischer, Camp brings a light touch of the tender-hearted sensibility of his Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. He is careful about preserving the most beloved details of the original, but making it more inclusive. My first choice would be a new story with characters we haven't seen before. My second choice would be reimagining an earlier work. Well, too many missed that last part. But my third choice would be a nice, pleasantly sweet movie that pays tribute to the fans of the original with a few thoughtful expansions. And that is just what this is. Lilo and Stitch review. This year, Disney may have gone too far, turning perhaps its single greatest animated film into a heavily CG-augmented quasi-live-action monstrosity. No, not the already infamous box office bomb Snow White. The animated basis for that movie is a monumental achievement in the medium, but it's ultimately a famous version of a timeless fairy tale that seems fair game for reinterpretation. Lilo and Stitch, however, is the rare sui generis piece of Disney animation, one that somehow emerged during a tumultuous time for the animation studio to become a substantial hit back in 2002. The film has endured because it's a triumph of mixing techniques. Old-fashioned, ultra-expressive hand-drawn animation and watercolor backgrounds, dashes of newfangled computer animation to assist with some of its sci-fi heavier scenes, and a story about a stranded alien befriending a misfit little girl that crosses E.T. with Looney Tunes anarchy. The story is still there in the new sort of live-action reimagining of Lilo and Stitch. The story is almost always still there in Disney's series of self-remakes, especially when it comes to their more modern classics. Say what you will about that recent Snow White, but it's not a subservient recreation. Plenty of dialogue is retained too, and the movie does a fine job of transferring Stitch into a 3D live-action environment, not monkeying around with a near-perfect cartoon design. The fuzzy blue creature, his Muppet with teeth mouth and his alien bunny ears intact, still endures. Kids will love him, as ever. The movie around him, however, is ghastly. It's not just that Lilo, Maia Kealoha, a 6-year-old Hawaiian girl living with her older sister nanny, Sydney Elizebeth Agudong, loses the carefully detailed and collaborative performance given by animators and her original voiceover in favor of kid actor mugging and cutesy wisecracks. That's not little Kealoha's fault, of course, and possibly unavoidable in making a live-action version at all. But far worse, director Dean Fleischer Camp, Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, doesn't give either the poor humans or special effects characters any kind of visible technical support in their impossible task. That's evident right away in an opening sequence that serves as a model for how to lose the rhythm of a film even while following its blueprint nearly line for line. The scene where alien mad scientist Jumba, Zach Galifianakis, is brought before a galactic council to answer for his creation of Experiment 626, later named Stitch, still voiced by the character's co-creator Chris Sanders, biffs the timing on every beat, speed running through the requisite exposition, and Stitch's subsequent escape in a jumble of barely coherent cuts and stiffly rendered images of the earlier film's whimsical designs. None of it really tracks unless you've already watched the cartoon. Camp's seemingly panicked strategy never varies, even as the story slows down to examine the hectic lives of Lilo and Nani, orphan sisters threatened with social services separation unless young adult Nani can get and keep a better-paying job. The arrival of Stitch, who Lilo mistakes for a dog and adopts, brings chaos into their lives, though less havoc overall than this movie brings to its source material. Disney has allowed, maybe even encouraged, its filmmakers to take a work known for its idiosyncratic beauty and humor and cut it into a hash of coverage, where chintzy reaction shots are prioritized over the scenic beauty of Hawaii, or how its residents might move through this world. When Jumba and his nerdier fellow alien Pleakley, Billy Magnussen, take human form to pursue Stitch on Earth, and also to save further on already cut-rate-looking visual effects, the movie can't even be bothered to frame their funny walks clearly. Even more than some green screen disasters, the actors feel as if they're performing into a void. As Stitch grows into his broken family, the movie manages a few affecting and funny moments. But does it deserve credit for recreating them all from the earlier movie? almost always making them a little bit worse in the process. With a running time expanded by more than 20 minutes, as these things so often are, there should at least be room for a substantial round of brand new Stitch antics. Yet the bits and pieces of new material barely seem to understand Stitch's initially malevolent personality, recoding him as the untrained party animal he's pretending to be. Occasional new ideas, like a ray gun that opens up shortcut portals, are squandered with first idea, best idea roughness. All told, there's hardly a single smile in Lilo and Stitch 25 not generated through the stolen valor of the earlier screenplay, and hardly a poignant moment that's not more admirably raw in the G-rated version. That original film gave both Lilo and Nani some real anger and pain beneath their strife, with Stitch as a rampaging id not quite large enough to conquer the world. Camp's remake wants to manage that pain more tittily, and give Nani in particular a more correct, entirely uninteresting ending. The 2002 film can stand comfortably alongside superficially similar but tonally distinct children's stories like E.T. the Iron Giant and My Neighbor Totoro. Now, however, Lilo and Stitch steps forward from that crowd of modern classics as the only one whose keepers didn't bother to protect it from a cheap branded knockoff. Beginning as almost a shot-for-shot remake and soon evolving into a more nuanced approach to its themes, Lilo and Stitch doesn't prove to be wholly necessary, but it does distinguish itself from the original. Starring Maia Kealoha as Lilo, Sydney Agudong as Nani, and featuring Chris Sanders returning as the voice of Stitch, the new take on the classic Disney movie is the kind of summer adventure kids and adults will be happy to sink their teeth into. Changing enough that the story is different but still recognizable, Lilo and Stitch will be one of summer's big hits. The beloved 2002 movie was a little messy. There were plot holes and logical issues, but this was part of the reason fans have revisited the project so many times for over 20 years. When it comes to remaking such a prominent part of so many people's childhoods, there's always a lot of risk. However, Lilo and Stitch tightens the story and sharpens its focus, getting rid of some of the glaring structural issues with the first film. Its emotional alterations are a little self-conscious, but Lilo and Stitch is also having a lot of fun. The issue with live-action adaptations largely revolves around the fact that audiences question why they're necessary in the first place. However, Lilo and Stitch has an awareness of this throughout the movie. It doesn't rely on the strength of the IP to get us into theaters. Overall, the characters are stronger and more fully realized, especially Nani, and her and Lilo's world is clearer and more vibrant. The film bursts with friends and neighbors, and detailed specifics about the memories the girls cherish, which effectively tug on our heartstrings. Going into Lilo and Stitch, I was worried that there would be so much CGI it would be distracting, as the 2002 Lilo and Stitch relies on the animation to carry a lot of the humor. However, the project felt surprisingly real and rooted in its setting. The fact that it was shot on location in Hawaii adds to the atmosphere, anchoring what could easily be a film that dips into uncanny valley territory. Fortunately, the opposite is true. Lilo and Stitch invests heavily in its live-action settings and storytelling, allowing us to see ourselves in the narrative. Agudong takes center stage as Nani, who gets a much larger role in this iteration of the story, but it's the adorable Kealoha who steals the show as Lilo. It can't be easy to have chemistry with an alien who will be added in post-production. However, Kealoha is enchanting, and her relationships with Stitch and Nani are truthful. It isn't a chore to spend time with the characters. Lilo and Stitch balances its more direct take on grief and the prospect of the sisters' separation with plenty of adventure and humor that prevents the plot from getting too dark. Similar to 2002's Lilo and Stitch, the concentric plot lines are a little disjointed until the final moments of the story, when everyone finally crosses paths in their attempts to capture Stitch. However, many of the story's strengths can also be traced back to the original. It's not the most nuanced or emotionally complex plot ever written, but the new Lilo and Stitch doesn't try too hard to overcomplicate it. The film lets the heartfelt narrative speak for itself and revels in the joy of finding your family in unexpected places. I have no doubt that Lilo and Stitch will be a smash hit, hopefully kicking off a blockbuster summer that will continue reviving the box office. It's clear from the film that Disney is finally beginning to understand that these live-action remakes need to be as warm and inviting as their animated counterparts. We don't flock to the theaters to watch a story that's already been told with better animation to see flashy effects of hollow green screen sets. Audiences want to be moved and given a reason to revisit the emotions sparked by the story, and Lilo and Stitch delivers. It's easy to keep a mental tally throughout one of these projects, counting all the ways it's the same or different from the original. However, somewhere along the way, I stopped keeping score. I let myself join Lilo and Nani as they try to be good for each other and grapple with the fact that grief often goes hand in hand with anger. The stakes are a little higher in the film this time around, and the problems are just as rooted in reality. However, this doesn't stop you from being swept away by the joys of the new Lilo and Stitch. Lilo and Stitch is Disney's latest live-action retread of an earlier animated classic. The movie exists not because this story is particularly relevant right now or because an artistic imperative inspired its filmmakers to revisit the material. It exists because the House of Mouse had intellectual property and built-in brand recognition to exploit for millions of dollars. And while the soulless, shamelessly capitalistic quality of the studio's recent string of remakes leaves examples such as Aladdin, 2019, and Peter Pan and Wendy, 2023, devoid of any creative spark, this one has a rambunctious energy that defies the stodgy, hollow formula of Disney's recent live-action remakes. That's partly because the 2002 original is an animated feature that avoids fairy tale classicism in favor of a zippy, playful story about a Hawaiian girl and her dog, a blue chaos creature in the form of a cute alien, dubbed the flawed product of a deranged mind. The story's inherently loose and unconventional structure for Disney, along with the central relationship's genuine tenderness, makes it more engaging to watch than other recent adaptations. Dean Fleischer Camp, best known for directing and co-writing Marcel the Shell with Shoes On, 2021, imbues Lilo and Stitch with something most of these Disney cash grabs lack: life. That's partly due to the nature of the story, partly due to his excellent lead, newcomer Maia Kealoha. She plays Lilo without the affectations and showbiz gloss most child actors struggle to avoid. Rather than watching a child performer showboat for the camera or struggle through lines, Kealoha has an unself-conscious naturalism that never feels false or labored. She makes her scenes with Stitch, voiced by Chris Sanders, as in the 2002 film, seem not like an actor working with a CGI blob, but like a child playing with her favorite pet. As a result, every scene with the titular characters feels alive and put a smile on my face. Though, I cannot say the same about the Catch the Alien plot mechanics. Somewhere in space, an alien federation discusses the fate of an illegal genetic experiment, an unstoppable weapon created in a lab by Dr. Jumba Jukiba, Zach Galifianakis. This weapon is Stitch, an unruly, adorable, six-armed fuzzball who soon escapes his sentence in a spaceship and crashes in Hawaii, pursued by his mad scientist creator and Pleakley, Billy Magnussen, an upbeat expert on all things Earth. Oddly, the humanoid aliens and their technology have been animated to look like cartoons, not in the hand-drawn style of the 2002 movie, but in a digital manner that might look appropriate in a sci-fi Pixar feature, such as Wall-E, 2008, or Lightyear, 2022. They don't quite fit with the human actors. It's worth imagining how much better these alien scenes would have been had the filmmakers used old-school puppets or makeup, like any number of Star Trek or Star Wars aliens. Instead, there's a visual disharmony between the humans and aliens. Fortunately, Jukiba and Pleakley soon adopt human disguises, played by Galifianakis and Magnussen, with plenty of physical humor. However, the narrative momentum belongs to Lilo and her older sister Nani, Sydney Elizebeth Agudong, whose parents died recently. Nani struggles in her new sister-turned-mother role, facing pressure from social services to create a stable home. That's a challenge, given Lilo's penchant for causing trouble. Other kids label her weird because she's independent and imaginative, meaning she's a loner too. One night, Lilo wishes upon a star for a best friend, and conveniently, Stitch enters their lives. Lilo soon adopts him from an animal rescue, where almost no one appears concerned that she's hanging around an unidentifiable blue creature. Elsewhere, Agent Cobra Bubbles, Courtney B. Vance, a member of this movie's Men in Black, attempts to obtain evidence of an alien presence on Earth. Also, in a strange turn, Tia Carrere and Jason Scott Lee, who voiced major characters in the animated version, appear in diminished roles as humans. At the heart of Lilo and Stitch is a moving story about broken or non-traditional families and how they're no less vital or legitimate. This idea resonated in the 2002 version, and screenwriters Chris Kekaniokalani Bright and Mike Van Waes continue the theme here. They write plenty of saccharine moments where characters underline this point, making it unmissable. Crammed amid a soundtrack dominated by Elvis hits, fart and belch jokes, and Stitch's general silliness and cuteness, there's also a theme about how people are complicated. "You're not bad," Lilo tells her alien friend designed to destroy whole cities. "You just do bad things sometimes." Lilo doesn't always behave either. Most kids don't. But that doesn't mean they should be made to feel worthless or like little monsters. Speaking of kids, I should report that many children who attended my press screening seemed uninterested in Lilo and Stitch. Usually a cross-section of young viewers adds to the Disney movie experience. If they cheer or verbally react to the screen, the movie has engaged its target demographic. If they run around the theater like Stitch on a rampage, as the kids in my screening did, that could mean a couple of things. Perhaps the parents in these cases had no sense of theater decorum and let their children run wild. Or maybe the kids were just plain bored, having seen the original. After all, apart from a few alternative scenes and small details, the new version follows the original closely, so much so that I recalled scenes from the 2002 movie, which I last saw over 20 years ago, that were replicated almost exactly in Camp's take. Regardless of how these children responded, I found the experience harmless fun, mostly diverting, and occasionally charming. The best animated films are the ones that work on multiple levels, allowing children and adults to engage, often in different ways, with the characters and story. Throughout its history, Walt Disney Pictures has excelled in making those kinds of films. Lilo and Stitch isn't one of them. The film is pitched toward younger viewers, choosing to optimize the enjoyment of 4 to 9-year-olds over the appreciation of their parents. While the result is far from the pinnacle of Disney's family-friendly production hill, it's at least as good as most of the other animated to live-action transformations. Anyone with a young child will likely appreciate the film more than those who don't. Adults with a nostalgic connection to the original animated film, released in 2002 at tail end of Disney's 1990s animated renaissance, are apt to react positively to this retelling of the story. Those who don't fall into either category, or both, will probably perceive this as a juvenile, heavy-handed pastiche of bad science fiction tropes, cheesy slapstick, and undercooked drama. Overall, this Lilo and Stitch isn't shy about who it's trying to reach, and that audience doesn't include anyone in search of well-crafted cinema. This was originally appropriately planned as a direct-to-Disney Plus feature. It was switched to a theatrical release when studio executives saw the final cut and their eyeballs turned into dollar signs. I was not a fan of the original Lilo and Stitch, but that's perhaps because I made the mistake of trying to compare it to the litany of modern classics that had preceded it. It never was one of them, nor did it try to be. It was a big-screen cartoon, which is how most moviegoers at the time saw it. Lilo and Stitch was a box office success and spawned several direct-to-DVD sequels and several TV series. It's just old enough that some of the kids who were fans now have children of their own. That aspect of sharing a beloved childhood favorite is the whole reason why this generation of soulless live-action remakes continues to plague the box office. To be fair, Lilo and Stitch contains some adult-friendly material. A few of the gags are funny, and the manipulative bonding material between Lilo and her older sister works on a basic emotional level. The young actress who plays Lilo, Maia Kealoha, is absolutely adorable. She's the embodiment of rambunctiousness that characterizes the average high-energy 6-year-old. I enjoyed the Elvis songs, although they are neither as omnipresent nor as important as in the original. The narrative framework tracks that of the 2002 film. Changes are mostly minor. One character has been split into two, and others have been combined. The two alien antagonists have been given human disguises to allow for actor portrayals and presumably to save on special effects money. But the main story remains the same. How the orphaned Lilo craves a friend and finds one when she discovers the blue alien Stitch, Chris Sanders, hiding out in an animal shelter. The creature, which Lilo mistakes for a strange dog, is really a Kekaniokalani. Experiment 626, an intergalactic terror known for spreading chaos everywhere it goes. Lilo, Stitch, and Lilo's older, beleaguered sister, Nanny, Sydney Elizebeth Agudong, struggle to form a family as forces collaborate to rip them apart. Those include a stern but well-intentioned social worker, Tia Carrera, who believes Lilo would be better in a foster home, two aliens, Dr. Dom, Jumba Jukiba, Zach Galifianakis, and Agent Wendell Pleakley, Billy Magnussen, who have been sent to recapture Stitch, and CIA agent Cobra Bubbles, Courtney B. Vance, who is investigating extraterrestrial activity on Earth. With these live-action remakes, one doesn't have to be concerned about animation quality, but there's a lot of CGI stuff in Lilo and Stitch, and it often has a cheapish look. One suspects that if Disney had envisioned this as a big-screen endeavor from the beginning, they might have accorded the production a bigger budget, but director Dean Fleischer Camp, best known for the Marcel the Shell with his shoes on movies, does the best he can with what he has and makes good use of the picturesque beauty of Hawaii where the film is set. In the casting department, the production has struck gold in choosing the two primary humans. Maia Kealoha, making her feature debut, more than compensates for her lack of experience with an infectious energy. Sydney Elizebeth Agudong has more experience than Kealoha, but leaves an equally strong impression. The sisterly chemistry between the two is one of the film's strengths. Original Stitch voice actor and creator Chris Sanders returns as the blue alien. Despite having experienced logistical issues doing the role, he was finalizing The Wild Robot, which he directed at the time. The rest of the actors, including Zach Galifianakis, Billy Magnussen, and Courtney B. Vance, are largely forgettable. Tia Carrera, who voiced Nani in the 2002 film, has a small role. Lilo and Stitch feels less like an obvious cash grab than Snow White, although that's perhaps because the original isn't as esteemed. The animated Lilo and Stitch is sufficiently mediocre that the decision to upgrade it to live action hasn't provoked much in the way of outrage. There's nothing about the production to disabuse notions that it is an effective bonding opportunity for parents and young children, especially girls with a healthy side order of nostalgia, Disney's overused spice of choice for its live-action dishes. A lonely Hawaiian girl befriends a runaway alien, helping to mend her fragmented family. In a catalog that mostly amounts to emotionless, soulless recreation, it is pleasant to report that the Lilo and Stitch live-action remake from director Dean Fleischer Camp successfully tugs at the heartstrings, simultaneously deepening its central Hawaiian family dynamics and characterizations. The problem is that Disney still doesn't seem to understand that animation is a medium, not a genre. One would think they of all people would firmly know this, and didn't account that no matter which brilliant filmmaker they plucked to helm this project, Dean Fleischer Camp was responsible for the outstanding Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. Translating the humor, jokes, and general plot would come across awkward, even if fugly blue koala-looking alien Stitch himself is better suited for a CGI take rather than, say, lions. When hand-drawn animated, it's organic to laugh and hand-wave away humans questioning whether Stitch is a dog or passing as one without suspicion. In live action, it's harder to get away with, especially when that alien is regularly causing chaos that occasionally becomes hazardous, whether it's toward his owner, young Lilo, here played with wide-eyed optimism, kindness, and spirited enthusiasm by Maia Kealoha, or outdoor dining civilians during a fire mishap. At a certain point, the realness factor of the live-action element kicks in, and one wants someone to take the ensuing destruction and alien presence a bit more seriously instead of playing it off as harmless hijinks. There are still laughs here, with the bond between Lilo and Stitch still coming across as sweet, but much of it simply isn't funny. The live-action component feels primarily to blame, since during the all-CGI opening on Stitch's home planet, the jokes are effective, including a cutaway to a hilarious chess gag. It's also reasonable that someone might be reading this and wondering if this critic knows how to have fun or suspend disbelief. The counterpoint would easily be a reminder that something is always off about these Disney live-action remakes, whether uncanniness, dead expressions, flat musical arrangements, muted colors, or lifeless performances. Lilo and Stitch is no exception. It's almost an indescribable feeling. But the blunt truth is that, as with most Disney live-action remakes, something was lost in translation. The point was lost on me, and I wished I were watching the animated version. That's also frustrating, since Stitch, as a CGI creation, is not the problem, here rendered with a lovable, mischievous charm, and the original film's director, Chris Sanders, returns to voice him. However, in this version, the human dynamics are more compelling than the human-alien bonding. Working with a screenplay from Chris Kekaniokalani Bright and Mike Van Waes, based on the 2003 original by Chris Sanders and Dean DeBlois, there is a bit more about these characters fleshed out, which is reflected in a running time almost 25 minutes longer than its animated counterpart. Notably, the sisterhood between Lilo and her guardian sister Nanny, Sydney Agudong, is given more time not solely to expand on the latter's struggles at presenting herself as a responsible parental figure, their hobbies, hopes, and dreams, and how their bond has changed from sister to mother in the years following the death of their parents. Anyone who has seen the original knows Ohana means family, and that no one gets left behind. However, this version smartly suggests that while that is essential, it also shouldn't come at the expense of personal fulfillment. They are visited by social care worker Mrs. Kikoa, Tia Carrere, who voiced Nani in the original, understanding of the situation, and that Nani is trying her best. Most of that effort is undone by the rambunctious Lilo and Stitch duo, who are either inadvertently getting her fired or jamming to Elvis Presley. Lilo is also considered an outcast by the girls in her hula classes, meaning she is naturally drawn to the otherworldly and hyperactive Stitch. Lilo wished for a best friend, and Stitch initially uses her interest to hide from a pair of aliens looking to bring him back to his home planet. They would be egotistical scientist Dr. Jumba Jukiba and Agent Pleakley, who try to blend in as humans by taking the form of vacationers, played by Zach Galifianakis and Billy Magnussen, under the assumption that giving off a best friend vibe will work in their favor. Mostly it amounts to cheap fish-out-of-water humor and annoying performances leaning too far into cartoonish expressions. Everything from Stitch's crash landing to these dimwits brings in a government agent played by Courtney B. Vance to investigate. While the comedy rarely works in this translation from animation to live action, Lilo and Stitch has heart that bursts through in a moving, reworked third act. That's also not enough to compensate for an hour that flails tonally, partially because much of this material was never intended for live action, and it shows. Lilo and Stitch, Disney's latest live-action remake, has been screened for select members of the press, and the first reactions to the film are overwhelmingly positive. Critic Wendy Lee Sani wrote on X, "Lilo and Stitch is the best Disney live-action to date. Seeing Stitch in his live-action form on the big screen brings on a huge wave of nostalgia. Tons of laughter and heartwarming moments. The film hit similar beats to the original, as well added something new flavors." Journalist Laura Siricul wrote on X, "Lilo and Stitch was heartwarming and really gave the official film more depth to Lilo and Nani. Maia Kealoha is a star. The Stitch was so well made. I never imagined in 23 years they'd be able to merge animation and live action this well. It was magical, very sweet." The original Lilo and Stitch was released in 2002, making this the most recent animated movie that Disney has turned into live action, and the first from the 2000s. Both movies follow a young, lonely Hawaiian girl named Lilo, who finds an adorable blue and chaotic alien she names Stitch. With her big sister Nani, Lilo raises Stitch and teaches him the meaning of family, or ohana. The cast includes Maia Kealoha as Lilo, Sydney Elizebeth Agudong as Nanny, Zach Galifianakis as Dr. Jumba Jukiba, Stitch's alien creator who comes looking for him, Billy Magnussen as Agent Pleakley, Courtney B. Vance as Cobra Bubbles, Hannah Waddingham as the Grand Councilwoman, and the original movie's co-director and co-writer Chris Sanders returning as the voice of Stitch. Tia Carrere, who was the original voice of Nanny, is also back playing a social worker this time around. The first, Lilo and Stitch, was a box office success and grossed $273 million worldwide from an $80 million budget. It was nominated for Best Animated Feature at the Academy Awards, but lost to Spirited Away. It went on to spawn several sequels, TV shows, and video games, thanks to Stitch's popularity with kids. Lilo and Stitch, 2 Stitch has a glitch 2005 revealed on the podcast. Kyle Meredith, with that he will have a cameo in the film as the manager of the Lua, where Nanny and David work in May 2025. It was revealed that the original film's main antagonist Gantooth, the corrupt captain of the United Galactic Federation's Amadao, was cut from the film. Filming principal photography was slated to start in Hawaii on March 13 to 23 and finish on June 16th. However, the first day of filming was delayed until April 17th. On April 16, 2023, a fire broke out in a trailer within the base camp of the film set in Haley, causing approximately $200,000 in damage the trailer contained. Costumes that would have been used for the first 3 weeks of filming. The fire started before 11 p.m. Hawaii Standard Time and was extinguished by 1 a.m. the following day. There were no reported injuries, although the beginning of filming was delayed indefinitely. The Honolulu Police Department classified it as a first-degree arson and opened an investigation in response. Filming eventually began by May 1, 2023, when a portion of the Colleen Highway was closed. For the film's production, filming was suspended in July due to the 2023 SAJFT strike. It eventually resumed in February 2024 and finally wrapped in early March that year on February 3, 2025. It was revealed that Den Roma would score the film. The film's soundtrack features almost all of the songs from the original film. These include the Elvis Presley songs Devil in Disguise, Hound Dog, Heartbreak Hotel, and a new cover of Burning Love produced by Bruno Mars and performed by his nephews Niger Music and Zia Rhythm, Mark Kaihumalu. And the Kamehameha School's children's chorus returned to record a new original song called Hele Pahi no Li Stitch. American Idol Season 21 winner Amtongi, and the chorus also recorded a new version of Hawaiian Roller Coaster Ride, which was released as a single on May 9, 2025, ahead of a live performance of their version on Season 23 of American Idol on May 12th, Lily Wakani's Aloha Oe. A song featured prominently throughout the animated continuity. Returns for this film in a duet performed by Sydney Agudong and Maia Kealoha as Nani and Lilo, respectively. The soundtrack album was released on May 21, 2025 by Walt Disney Records, a limited edition picture disc. 10 vinyl single featuring 3 of the songs were released on May 23, 2025. Marketing, a first look at the film's live-action Stitch design, was revealed at the 2024 D23 convention on August 9th, 2024. Screen Rant and Collider both reacted positively to the reveal. On November 8th, 2024, during D23 Brazil, Disney released a still from the film showing Stitch wearing a lei and looking at an out-of-focus Lilo while standing on her bed. On November 22nd, Disney published the first teaser poster for the film featuring an extreme close-up of Stitch. On November 25th, Disney released the first teaser trailer showing Stitch on a beach destroying a sand castle modeled after Cinderella Castle as depicted in Disney's production logo. On November 27th, the same day of the wide release of Moana 2, a new poster was shown featuring Stitch with a Kakamura from the Moana franchise in his mouth, alluding to the original film's crossover-based marketing campaign, in which Stitch invaded other Disney films on December 18th, 2 days before the release of Mufasa, The Lion King. Another crossover poster and another teaser trailer were released, both showing Stitch being held up in the air in the same vein as the presentation of baby Simba in The Lion King 1994. The trailer shows him wearing water, wings being held up by a pair of human arms until he struggles out of them to splash in shallow seawater. The accompanying poster has him being held up by Rafiki instead, as with The Lion King. Interstitial trailer for the original Lilo and Stitch film, a TV spot created exclusively to air during Super Bowl 59, was released on February 9th, 2025, featuring Stitch seemingly interrupting the kickoff by running around Caesars Superdome like a football player. The spot received 173.1 million online views in 24 hours, making it Disney's most digitally viewed spot in the company's history. The official trailer was released on March 12, 2025. Lilo and Stitch creator Chris Sanders' 63rd birthday, showing several of the characters other than Stitch for the first time. The trailer's release caused Lilo and Stitch to be the #1 trending topic on X, YouTube, and Dan, reaching #1 on the former platform within an hour of release on March 14th. Disney announced that the trailer became the company's second most viewed live-action film trailer within 24 hours, with 158 million views within that time, only behind the teaser trailer for The Lion King 2019, which received 224.6 million views within such time frame on March 19th. Several posters inspired by past remakes of classic Disney films, including Snow White 2025, Cinderella 2015, Beauty and the Beast 2017, and Aladdin 2019 featured Stitch messing with important objects from each one of the films. On April 3rd, during CineIcon's Disney panel, a new poster was revealed featuring Stitch having wreaked havoc on elements from Disney and the company's major film studios, such as Marvel Studios, 20th Century Studios, Pixar Animation Studios, and Lucasfilm, release in November 2020. Variety and The Hollywood Reporter reported that Disney had not determined whether the film would be released theatrically or through Disney Plus in November 2022. It was confirmed via a casting call that the film was to be produced for a direct-streaming Disney Plus release. In August 2024, the film was shifted to a summer 2025 theatrical release. In October, the film was given our release date of May the 23rd, 2025. That the release will also include engagements in Real D3D, Dolby Cinema, and 4D XM. Theaters will have a special Lilo and Stitch opening night fan event in Dolby Cinema. Regal Cinemas will have a special Lilo and Stitch fan event in 4DX and Cinemark. Theaters will have a Lilo and Stitch fan event super ticket package in Real D3D that will take place on May 22nd at 6:26 p.m. Referencing Stitch's experiment, other name, of Experiment 626, the film held its world premiere at the El Capitan Theater in Los Angeles, the same venue that hosted the premiere of the original film on May 17, 2025. The film was rated PG by the MPA, making it the first Disney live-action remake to share the same rating as the original film reception. After tickets went on sale, Fandango Media reported that Lilo and Stitch became the best first ticket pre-sale of the year for a PG-rated title, surpassing a Minecraft movie Snow White Dogman and a U.S. release of Paddington in Peru. It also became the second most first ticket pre-seller for a Disney remake behind The Lion King. Critical response on the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, 69 of 140 critics' reviews are positive. The website's consensus reads, recapturing the adorable charm of the original, if not quite matching its rambunctious sense of imagination, Lilo and Stitch emerges out of the crate as one of the better live-action remakes of a Disney classic. Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 53 out of 100 based on 37 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. Lilo and Stitch movie review only a few years ago, when considering new projects, the Pixar and Disney teams would ask, why does this story need to be told in animation? The idea was that the art form should only be used to tell the stories that demanded to be animated. That question is perhaps less necessary in this VFX-assisted reboot. It might be time to bring it back in reverse form. Does this animation need to be live action? Some recent remakes can't help but feel like a lesser effort, and that's sadly the case with Lilo and Stitch. That's despite the considerable efforts of director Dina Shell with Shoes on Flea Camp and his cast and crew. It's not that they did a bad job or had too little respect for the original, if anything. Quite the opposite. This funny, sweet film still feels like a pale imitation of its sun-soaked predecessor, because that's literally what it is, a real-world take on the pastel and primary original. They've stripped out a few supporting characters and smartly played up the sisterly relationship to take full advantage of the live actors, but it's more rearranging the furniture than remodeling the house. Maia Kealoha is excellent as young Lilo as Sydney, Elizebeth Agudong as your sister nanny, who gets a big storytelling boost to become the emotional glue of the whole film. Capable and smart nanny has put her own life on hold to try and look after her sister after their parents' death, but she's coming apart at the seams too, and even a sympathetic social worker can't do enough to get them through. Then comes the chaotic addition of Stitch, a furry and more detailed but not actually cuddlier version of Chris Sanders' original monster Q, alien shenanigans, and a lot of soul-searching by everyone to figure out where they belong. In the world, the story, in other words, is largely unchanged in its major beats. Though there are some tweaks, Flea Camp has cut back on the Elvis songs for a film that's heavier on Hawaiian music, and indeed that feels more rooted in Hawaiian culture. But big moments of emotion and exposition are oddly woolly in the edit, and Lilo's bad behavior has been softened considerably. She no longer bites her sister, but only licks her arm. It's unclear what lies behind such tweaks, be it concern for child actors or the demands of having a VFX lead character, but even with an extra 20-odd minutes, this doesn't add as many laughs or as many emotional gut punches as you'd hope. It's not bad, it can't be. It's too similar to the 2002 film that is one of Disney's all-time best, but it's time to either give filmmakers the room to cut loose with these aches and dare to do something very different, or stop doing them way back in 2002 when Lilo and Stitch first came out as an animated film. I was honestly quite mixed on the film. I felt it was overly somber and then too silly with the alien shenanigans show. Ever it is a movie that has grown on me. I really appreciate how unique it is in the Disney canon of films. Here's my video on the film for my Disney Canon Project. Love that. Lilo is a weird little girl with strange hobbies, like taking pictures of fat people and collecting creepy dolls. I love the relationship between the sisters and the spirit of Ohana, and all the Hawaiian vibes. I, of course, love the watercolor aesthetic to the animation is so unique in the Disney canon that it really sticks out as a special film, even if the tone doesn't always work for me. Now we have the new live-action remake, and I feel very conflicted about the film. It's fine, and the little girl playing Lilo is very cute, and most people will see the movie and have a pleasant enough time. I guess my struggle is, what's the point? As messy as the recent Snow White is, at least it tried new things, had new songs, took the story in a new direction. This Lilo and Stitch is the exact same movie as the animated film, but in live action, so the uniqueness of the animation is lost. Director Dean Fleischer Camp has done what he can to create a cute new Stitch, and the little girl playing Lilo, Kealoha, is very cute. But almost everything else is identical. Ganu is replaced by Jumba, but the aliens are mostly humans, Zach Galifianakis and Billy Magnus, and their antics are basically the same. The only other change with that character as far as scenes, this is pretty much a shot-for-shot remake of the animated film. And why would I want that when I can just watch the animated film? It just feels like a cash grab to me. And I find that frustrating, especially with all the resources Disney has at their disposal. That said, I'm sure lots of people will see this Lilo and Stitch and have a good time with it, because a lot of people have a good time with the animated film. If a short 4-shot remake sounds appealing to you, then go and see it. As for me, I can just sigh and wish the world was different than it is. Can I at least ask everyone who sees this film to also watch Fleischer Camp's delightful Marcel the Shell with shoes on? That would make me happy. Other information about this film: the first, and this applies to all remakes, is that too much fidelity to the source material saps the movies of energy and enjoyable unpredictability. The best of Disney's cartoon to flesh and blood efforts have been those that goof script that jettison the recreation of fan favorite moments to play in those worlds and or tell different stories. As examples, Cruella the Jungle Book and Cinderella all feel like their own independent beasts with distinct creative drives. These con issue is that almost all the photorealistic Disney adaptations are based on fairy tales and musicals. With those origins, they can't escape a sense of artifice and typically come across like massively expensive, colorful productions that have been transplanted to a Hollywood soundstage from Broadway or the West End. The new live-action Lilo and Stitch isn't based on a fairy tale, though barring the inclusion of several Elvis hits, it isn't a musical either, and despite what a lot of the marketing material would have you believe. Director Dean Flea Camkamp, who made the Oscar-nominated Sin live-action hybrid Mel, the shell with shoes on, has the sense not to fixate on copy-pasting his source material frame by frame because it just won't work here, while audiences accept over-the-top action from the original 2002 cartoon. They'll likely have a hard time swallowing a real-life scene where an alien drives a petrol tanker into a volcano to get the thrust needed to reach an overhead spacecraft. Much like title character Stitch makes quick work of his shackles, the new film casts often over-faithful attitude to adaptation. To its benefit, of course, there will be viewers disgruntled by the changes to beloved characters and moments. Some removed, some reworked, mostly though the tweaks are in the film's favor, helping to set it up as a more contemporary version of what Lilo and Stitch has always been, a self-contained, grounded, and intimate tale of family, both found and biological grand. Fantasy has no place here, with the CGI reserved for extraterrestrial characters instead of consistently replacing obvious green screen backdrops. Lilo and Stitch is still the same story as it was 2 decades ago, however created as a biological weapon of destruction. Experiment 626 is set for exile. He swiftly escapes the alien authorities and crash lands on Earth, but ends up stuck on a Hawaiian island with his creator Dr. Jumba Juka and Agent Pella, donning human facades to facilitate his recapture, overseen by the United Galactic Federation's Grand Councilwoman. To buy himself time, Stitch masquerades as a dog and worms his way into the home of orphan sisters lonely 6-year-old Lilo and college-age Nani Pliai. The timing couldn't be worse as an overwhelmed Nanny risks losing custody of Liloto the state, and Stitch has no control over his instinct form, mischief. It's impossible to ignore the waft of calculated emotional manipulation in the new Lilo and Stitch to make sure you feel the big plot beats music swell, while the rawest moments are sidestepped to keep things safe and palatable. Till there's enough substance to snack on the computer, N-rated Stitch is an expressive delight, radiating the chaos energy that bratty Patowners will acknowledge with a knowing smile. Newcomer cowhigh skewed as Lilo, Elizebeth Agudong, who has the most interesting role as the film delves with more detail into Nani's disappointments, fierce sense of failure and cynicism born out of a grief she hasn't had a chance to process. As already mentioned, Lilo and Stitch doesn't have the courage to follow these threads to their ragged end, but at least they are present, stoked by the presence of Tia's career as a far more convincing social worker than the character of Cobra Bubbles in the original film that said Bubbles is still around, played by Courtney B. Vance, while elderly neighbor Titi is a welcome addition to the cast, adding further warmth and spirit to proceedings, and giving the Plikai girls a broader support team, warm and spirited, are good ways to describe the live-action Lilo and Stitch, along with cute and fluffy. If you want to quote Stitch himself, it won't rank among the best films of 2025. But it's definitely one of the better Disney remakes thanks to its simultaneous loosened grip on its source material and understanding of the original's tight familiar focus, which is more relatable than most this year. Disney may have gone to turning perhaps its single greatest animated film into a heavily CG-augmented quasi-live-action monstrosity. Not the already in Fox Office bomb Snow White. The animated basis for that movie is a monumental achievement in the medium, but it's ultimately a famous version of a timeless fairy tale that seems fair game for reinterpretation. Lilo and Stitch, however, is the rare, generous piece of Disney animation, one that somehow emerged during a tumultuous time for the animation studio to become a substantial hit. Back in 2002, the film has endured because it's a triumph of mixing techniques, old-fashioned, ultra-expressive hand-drawn animation and watercolor backgrounds, dashes of newfangled computer animation to assist with some of its sci-fi heavier scenes, and a story about a stranded alien befriending a misfit little girl that crosses E.T. with Looney Tunes anarchy. The story is still there in the new Sort 2 live-action reimagining of Lilo and Stitch. The story is almost always still there in Disney's series of self-reeks, especially when it comes to their more modern classics. Plenty of dialogue is retained too, and the movie does a fine job of transferring Stitch into a 3D live-action environment, not monkeying around with a near-perfect cartoon design. The fuzzy blue creature, his Muppet with teeth mouth, and his alien bunny ears intact, still Ender Skids will love him, sever the movie around him. However, as ghastly, it's not just that Lilo, a 6-year-old Hawaiian girl living with her older Easter nanny, loses the carefully detailed and collaborative performance given by animators and her original voiceover in favor of kid actor mugging and cutesy was cracks. That's not Little Clore's fault, of course, and possibly unavoidable in making a live-action version at all, but far worse. Director Dean Fleecamp doesn't give either the poor humans or special effects characters any kind of visible technical support in their impossible task. That's evident right away in an opening sequence that serves as a model for how to lose the rhythm of a film, even while following its blueprint nearly line for line. The scene where alien mad scientist Jumba is brought before a galactic council to answer for his creation of Experiment 626 later. Named Stitch biffs the timing on every beat speeder, running through the requisite exposition, and Stitch's subsequent escape in a jumble of barely coherent cuts and stiffly rendered images of the earlier film's whimsical designs. None of it really tracks unless you've already watched the cartoon camp's seemingly panicked strategy. Never varies, even as the story slows down to examine the hectic lives of Lilo and Nani, orphan sisters threatened with social services separation and less young adult. Nani can get a better paying job. The arrival of Stitch, who Lilo mistakes for a dog and adopts, brings chaos into their lives. Though less havoc overall than this movie brings to its source material, Disney has allowed, maybe even encouraged, its filmmakers to take a work known for its idiosyncratic beauty and humor and cut it into a hash of coverage where chintzy reaction shots are prioritized over the scenic beauty of Hawaii, or how its residents might move through this world when Jumba and his nerdier fellow alien Pleckley take human form to pursue Stitch on Earth. The movie can't even be bothered to frame their funny walks clearly, even more than some green screen disasters. The actors feel as if they are performing into a void as Stitch grows into his broken family. The movie manages a few affecting and funny moments, but does it deserve credit for recreating them all from the earlier movie? A little bit worse in the process, with a running time expanded by more than 20 minutes. There should at least be room for a substantial round of brand new Stitch antics. Yet the bits and pieces of new material barely seem to understand Stitch's initially malevolent personality, recoding him as the untrained party animal he's pretending to be. Occasional new ideas like a ray gun that opens up shortcut portals are squandered with first idea, best idea roughness. All told, there's hardly a single smile in Lilo and Stitch 25 not generated through the stolen veil of the earlier screenplay, and hardly a poignant moment that's not more admirably raw in the G-rated version. That original film gave both Lilo and Nani some real anger and pain beneath their strife with Stitch as a rampaging ID, not quite large enough to conquer the world. Camp's remake wants to manage that pain more tiddly and give Nani in particular a more correct, entirely uninteresting ending. The 2002 film can stand comfortably alongside superficially similar but in all distinct children's stories like E.T., The Iron Giant, and My Neighbor Torono. Whoever Lilo and Stitch steps forward from that crowd of modern classics as the only one whose keepers didn't bother to protect it from a cheap branded knockoff. More detail over 2 decades since its initial release. Dean DeBoyer and Chris Sanders' Lilo and Stitch 2002 has rightfully earned its place as one of the most beloved Disney animated movies to come after the studio's 90s Renaissance period. In the time since 2002, the character of Stitch has also become one. Of the studio's most iconic and lucrative mascots outside of the mouse himself, spawning director-to-DVD sequels and animated series, and a strong presence in Disney's merchandising empire, mindy, this massive popularity was born from the single original film 23 years ago, which was the only time Stitch graces screens until now. Taking into account Stitch's universal appeal and notoriety, a live-action remake of Lilo and Stitch feels like an inevitability designed for success, however, due to the financial and critical failure of Snow White. 2025, which has reportedly led to Walt Disney Studios putting a pause on live-action remakes, including a previously planned Tangled reimagining that was to be directed by Michael Gracey, Lilo and Stitch. 2025 has been burdened with a large responsibility. Not only does it have to be enough of a mainstream hit, but it also has to win back goodwill from the Disney audience, who have since lost faith in the company's live-action remake strategy. Directed by Dean Fleay, Camp best known for his A24 distributed stop-motion film Marcel the S, Hell with Shoes on 2021, the live-action Lilo. Stitch faithfully follows the familiar plot points of the original movie. However, a few minor additions and tweaks have been made to modernize the story for younger audiences. We open on Experiment 626, a superpowered life form who is deemed a wanted fugitive by the leader of the United Galactic Federation. The Grand Councilwoman Experiment 626 crash lands in Hawaii, and in an attempt to hide from his mad scientist alien creator, Dr. Jumbajuka, and UGF agent Pleckley, he pretends to be a dog and wins over the heart of a little girl named Lilo Plee after adopting him as her new pet. Stitch must face Lilo's older sister Nani and learn the true meaning of family, or as it is known in Hawaii, Ohana Lilo and Stitch 2002 is just as relevant with audiences today because it doesn't shy away from openly tackling complex subjects with sensitivity and care, more so than how other children's movies did in the early 2000s. Lilo and Nani are grieving the searching for stability. Fans will be glad that this aspect of the story is still intact. At times, the remake succeeds at delivering a satisfying amount of character depth and pathos because of this timeless narrative. Yet this all comes at a huge price. No matter how well-intentioned it may be, the original animated film's charm and personality are ultimately lost, while Stitch himself has translated well into a CG animated character. The cinematography of this Disney live-action remake is very forgettable and pedestrian when held up to the original animated movie, which boasts a beautiful watercolor aesthetic that serves as a love letter to its Hawaiian setting. There is absolutely no competition. There is almost no visual identity here. Every scene is shot in broad daylight, compositions are haphazardly put together, and despite some decent production design, 2025's Lilo and Stitch feels strangely cheap whenever alien characters are not on screen. Perhaps this is a result of the movie originally being produced for a director-streaming Disney Plus release, or maybe this just speaks to the studio's increasingly lazy production quality. Jumba and Plee notably stick out as characters whose shared charm has been sucked dry in the original Lilo and Walt. Stitch, the duo, disguise themselves as humans among the public by wearing unconvincing outfits to hide their alien features in the new movie. They simply have a device that cloaks them as humans via cloning. Billy Magnus does his best to play Pleely with a hilariously stilted and queer vibe, but Zach Galifianakis gives the film's worst performance due to a supreme lack of effort. Alien form or not, Galifianakis offers nothing to his Jumbo. This is especially disappointing as Jumba takes the main antagonist role in this remake, away from an absent Gantu. Another character that is unfortunately miscast is Nani, played by Sydney Agudong. Even if you disregard the colorism controversy and speculation that the actress's lighter skin tone was tanned during production, she falls short at portraying Nani with the needed nuance and intellectual maturity that the role requires. Nani's adolescence is highly emphasized in the remake, especially when interacting with a social worker, Mrs. Kikoa, played by Nani's original voice. Actor Tia Korea, despite this effort to ground the character, Agudong focuses too much on the chaotic side of Nani and not enough on her warmth. In contrast, newcomer Maia Kealoha impresses with her ability to portray Lilo's messier side. We get to see this early on in the film when she shoves her bully at a hula. Dancer Isidoland is shown making a ruckus around the beach resort, the rear admittedly times when Kealoha's performance feels inconsistent, but that can be linked back to the movie's overall direction, while director Dean Fleischer wears plenty of heart on his sleeve. Lilo and Stitch 2025 is not a good showcase of how his talents translate into big-budget studio filmmaking. If you didn't already know going in, there is nothing to indicate that this live-action reimagining comes from the director behind Marcel the Shell. Outside of decentering the alien element of the story, the changes in Lilo and Stitch 2025 are for the most part less irritating and unnecessary than other Disney remakes. Major changes in the third act give Nani motivations and depth outside of caring for her little sister, which builds up to something heartfelt and emotionally true. The Great. Amy Hill plays a brand new character, the sister's neighbor Tutu, whose plotline culminates in a genuine reflection of community that aligns with the story's familiar themes, as sweet as these moments are. They are hardly crucial or justify remaking this tale into live action as messy as Snow White was. It at least had a vision unique from its source material. Lilo and Stitch 2025 is a safe, disposable time at the movies that barely does right by the original film. If the 2002 animated classic is fresh in your memory, it's going to be easy to pick apart at the seams. I wish there was far more care put into the rest of the remake, as there was animating Stitch with photorealism, and that the weirdness and punk attitude of the original movie were better preserved. Many other critics have praised this as one of the best Disney live-action remakes. If that is true, then it is purely by default rather than any clear vision or metric of quality. With Snow White recently releasing and absolutely bombing, Disney is in a weird place with its live-action adaptations, once seen as a cash cow. There's a lot of speculation regarding their future. But if there's a new interpretation of a cartoon that I was actually looking forward to, it was Lilo and Stitch. I take up the stance that there are plenty of people out there who refuse to watch cartoons adapt the story and tweak it so it fits live action, but follow the same script as the cartoon. It's what all the best of these Disney films have managed to do. Meanwhile, the worst of them try to become something else entirely. So where does Lilo and Stitch fall? It's going to be hard to not just constantly compare this to the original, but I suppose that's what you get when it comes to these remakes. Lilo and Stitch follows a naughty little alien on the run and finding himself on Earth on a little island in Hawaii. He befriends a lonely little girl, and they quickly come to find that they need each other more than they ever realized. The best thing about Lilo and Stitch is that despite its alien co-star and rather cosmic story beats, this is a grounded story about family. The casting of Lilo is so vital, as the character is the perfect mix of strong-willed and stubborn, while still being easy to root for. Maia Kealoha fits well into the role, and her interactions with Sydney Agudong's Nani really nail the sisterly spirit. There's just the right amount of love and frustration towards each other. I had no idea that Tia Career would be appearing, and she's a nice physical representation of the love and care put into respecting the original film, because sure, there are changes, but it all falls in line with the spirit of what came before. It helps that they brought back Chris Sanders to voice Stitch, really bridging the gaps between live action and animation. He has that perfect tonality and energy. This really does feel like Stitch in every sense. His performance is perfectly captured in live action, with it being a bit surreal to see some of his tics in something other than 2D. The animators should be very proud, other than Stitch. It's really Billy Magnussen's plea that steals the show. I know there was some controversy because we didn't get him in drag, but they make up for it with a variety of wacky outfits, and Magnus is able to get the voice down to perfection. Another big improvement is with Jumba, whom Zach Galifianakis really breathes new life into. He's expanded a bit, made into more of a villain to root for. Just like the cartoon, where Lilo and Stitch thrives the most is with its emotional impact. Whether it's the story of Lilo being taken away from Nani by child services or Lilo being so lonely in the world, it's easy to connect with her plight. They even give meaning to simple Throwaways from the original Stitch's aversion to water is explored so much more. I love that they put some reason behind Stitch getting onto the surfboard in the first place versus it just being an over-the-top visual. This happens throughout, with nearly every moment expanded upon in a meaningful way. Dan. Roma does a good job creating a similar vibe to Alan Silvestri's original score. It really covers the Hawaiian vibe. Well, as some marks against it, I really got sick of the green screen that pops up far too much. Seemed like every time they were on a beach with a lot of sun, they needed green screen for some reason. But really, that's all I have against it. Maybe it's just the massive Lilo and Stitch fan in me. But I had an absolute blast here. I laughed, I cried, and I felt more here than I ever expected to. Maybe it's just Disney's history with such lifeless adaptations. But this one felt like more. I still remember seeing the original film in theaters and have very fond memories of the 2D animation. They were able to update it for live action without stepping on the toes of its cartoon counterpart, resisting the urge to arbitrarily change a ton. Had Disney just kept making these style of live action remakes, I don't think they'd be in the situation they currently are, because Lilo and Stitch is a good time at the movies that is sure to please fans old and new alike. On the cartoon to live action front, it's hard to see Disney topping this extra information in Disney's apparent quest to remake every one of their animated classics in live action. The difference between the good movies and the bad ones comes down to the filmmakers and their choices. Is their approach to some of the most well-known and beloved stories ever told on screen fresh enough to make us overlook the undeniably cynical, corporated-driven "you like this before, maybe you'll pay for it a lover again" spirit of the enterprise in the case of the new Lilo and Stitch? The answer is fortunately yes, and that's thanks to the inspired choice of trusting the tale of an alien fugitive befriending an orphaned earthling to director Dean Fleischer. Campamp, the co-creator of stop-motion sensation Marcel the Shell with Shoes One Camp, is a proven expert at blending quirk and silliness with genuine heart and depth. And while he and screenwriters Chris Kekaniokalani and Mike Vanny don't make any shocking deviations from the 2002 original, they do make the meaningful choice to root their out-of-this-world comedy in earthly concerns. They found the perfect Lilo in Maia Kealoha, which is saying something considering so much of the film rests on the shoulders of this little girl. She exerts just the right attitude, charm, and humor in the role, and does a notably strong job of selling the reality of her scenes with the CGI Stitch. The script gives Lilo a bit less of an edge than her animated counterpart. She still shoves another girl who insults her, but she doesn't throw any punches like she does in the original, but it doesn't shy away from her anguish over her parents' death either. It's clear that Lilo is a sweet kid channeling profound grief through her volatile behavior, just the type who could use the companionship of a fuzzy, four-armed powder keg from beyond the stars. While the friendship of the title duo remains key to this version of Lilo and Stitch, its most important relationship is actually the one between Lilo and her older sister Nani. They're the eye of the hurricane, whipped up by Stitch's arrival, working together to move past a loss whose aftermath is more deeply felt than the deaths of other mothers and fathers sprinkled so liberally throughout the Disney canon. Chloe and Agudong have a pivotal rapport with the two actresses, making it hard not to invest in Lilo and Nanian. Their bond, the possibility of their separation, a social worker must decide if nannies make with each other, and the audience, Agudong, gets to play some new shades of Nanny too, diving into her personal aspirations and how difficult it is to balance them with the responsibility of being sole caregiver for the sister she loves so much. The amplification of Nani's role lets her and Lilo continually shine together, and Stitch's transformation from non-stop chaos monster to someone who forges a real connection with Lilo plays just as endearing as in the original. But the further Lilo and Stitch gets from this tremendous core, the more it stumbles. The two aliens pursuing Stitch, Jumba, and Pleely have always been a somewhat odd fit with this story, largely there to add some more wackiness around the edges here. They demonstrate how hard it is to balance the classically cartoony aesthetics of the original with a more realistic filmmaking approach. They're comically inept attempts to blend into Their Hawaiian surroundings would be even harder to buy in live action, so they take on fully human disguises. Zach Galifianakis plays Jumba, while Billy Magnus is Pli. The two actors are certainly game, with Magnus in particular, looking like he's having a lot of fun getting really goofy. But where the humor with Lilo and Stitch almost always works, the wacky hijinks with Jumba and Play are more hit and miss. One of the more curious choices of adaptation involves the character of Cobra Bubbles. Lilo and Stitch's amusingly Tuffle-looking G-Man turned social worker. The remake splits his role in two with Courtney B. Vance playing Bubbles as an active CIA agent investigating alien sightings, while Nani's fitness as a guardian is determined by a new character, Mrs. Kikoa. It ends up making one of the major figures in the Lilo and Stitch universe. Feel a bit extraneous and leaves the fantastic Vance without much to do. Visually, there are a few moments where it feels like Camp felt beholden to replicate a memorable image from the original in terms of framing it similarly. Thankfully, that sort of what's-the-point mimicry doesn't become prevalent. The director is also able to have fun with some of the bigger sci-fi moments, including some clever visual gags involving an alien gun that can create portals as Lilo and Stitch comes to a close. It takes some of its biggest swerves from the source material. You don't want to give too much away, but I can say that one involves giving the film a more specific and hostile antagonist, while other changes arrive at the very end to underline what this version of the story is all about. It's an impactful conclusion, seemingly designed to make you say, "Oh," and like so much of Lilo and Stitch, it certainly succeeds on that front. The best animated films are the ones that work on multiple levels, allowing children and adults to engage, often in different ways, with the characters and story throughout its history. Walt Disney Pictures has excelled in making those kinds of films. Lilo and Stitch isn't one of them. The film is pitched toward younger viewers, choosing to optimize the enjoyment of 4 to 9-year-olds over the appreciation of their parents. While the result is far from the pinnacle of Disney's family-friendly production hill, it's at least as good as most of the other animated to live-action transformations. Anyone with a young child will likely appreciate the film more than those who don't. Adults with a nostalgic connection to the original animated film released in 2002 at tail end of Disney's 1990s. Animated Renaissance are apt to react positively to this retelling of the story. Those who don't fall into either category will probably perceive this as a juvenile, heavy-handed paste of bad science fiction tropes, cheesy slapstick, and undercooked drama. Overall, this Lilo and Stitch isn't shy about who it's trying to reach. And that audience doesn't include anyone in search of well-crafted cinema. This was originally appropriately planned as a direct-to-Disney Plus feature. It was switched to a theatrical release when studio executives saw the final cut and their eyeballs turned into dollar signs. I was not a fan of the original Lilo and Stitch, but that's perhaps because I made the mistake of trying to compare it to the litany of modern classics that had preceded it. It never was one of them. Nor did it try to be. It was a big screen cartoon, which is how most moviegoers at the time saw it. Lilo and Stitch was a box office success and spawned several direct-to-DVD sequels and several TV series. It's just old enough that some of the kids who were fans now have children of their own. That aspect of sharing a beloved childhood favorite is the whole reason why this generation of soulless live-action remakes continues to plague the box office. To be fair, Lilo and Stitch contains some adult-friendly material. A few of the gags are funny, and the manipulative bonding material between Lilo and her older sister works on a basic emotional level. The young actress who plays Lilo, Maia Kealoha, is absolutely adorable. She's the embodiment of rambunctiousness that characterizes the average high-energy 6-year-old I. Enjoyed the Elvis songs, although they are neither as omnipresent nor as important as in the original. The narrative framework tracks that of the 2002 film. Changes are mostly minor. One character been split into two and others have been combined. The two alien antagonists have been given human disguises to allow for actor portrayals. But the main story remains the same, how the orphaned Lilo craves a friend and finds one when she discovers the blue alien Stitch hiding out in an animal shelter. The creature, which Lilo mistakes for a strange dog, is really Experiment 626, an intergalactic terror known for spreading chaos everywhere it goes. Lilo? Stitch and Lilo's older beleaguered sister Nani struggle to form a family as forces collaborate to rip them apart. Those include a stern but well-intentioned social worker who believes Lilo would be better in a foster home, two aliens, Dr. Jumbajuka and Agent Wendell Pleely, who have been sent to recapture Stitch, and CIA Agent Cobra. Bubbles, who is investigating extraterrestrial activity on Earth with these live-action remakes. One doesn't. It often has a cheapish look when suspects that if Disney had envisioned this as a big screen endeavor from the beginning, they might have accorded the production a bigger budget, but director Dean Flay Campom does the best they can with what he has and makes good use of the picturesque beauty of Hawaii. Where the film is set in the casting department, the production has struck gold in choosing the two primary humans, Maia Kealoha making her feature debut more than compensates for her lack of experience. With an infectious energy, Sydney Elizebeth Agudong has more experience than Koha, but leaves an equally strong impression. The sisterly chemistry between the two is one of the film's strengths. Original Stitch. Voice actor Chris Sanders returns as the blue alien. Despite having experienced logistical issues doing the role, the rest of the actors, including Zach Galifianakis, Billy Magnus, and Courtney B. Vance, are largely forgettable. Tia Carrera, who voiced Nani in the 2002 film, has a small role. Lilo and Stitch feels less like an obvious cash grab than Snow White, although that's perhaps because the original isn't as esteemed. The animated Lilo and Stitch is sufficiently mediocre that the decision to upgrade it to live action hasn't provoked much in the way of outrage. There's nothing about the production to disabuse notions that it is an effective bonding opportunity for parents and young children with a healthy side order of nostalgia. Disney's overused spice of choice for its live-action dishes. This film, directed by Dean Fleekamp, screenplay by Chris Kekaniokalani, Bright, Mike Van Waes, produced by Jonathan Eirich, Dan Lin, starring Sydney Elizebeth Agudong, Billy Magnus, Hannah Waddingham, Chris Sanders, Courtney Vance, Zach Galifianakis, Maia Kealoha. Cinematography, Nigel Bluck, edited by Adam Gerstle, Philip J. Battle. Music by Dan Roma Production Companies. Walt Disney Pictures. Rideback, distributed by Walt Disney Studios. Motion Pictures. Release dates: May 17, 2025 in El Capitan Theater, May 23, 2025 in United States. Running time 108 minutes. Country, United States. Language, English. Budget, $100 million. Box office, $14.5 million. So guys, this is the review of Lilo and Stitch movie and some information about it. How do you like our today's video? Please let us know by commenting. And if you like this video, please like it, share it, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.